Swords are freaking awesome. I love the ones from Legend of Zelda, Terraria, Genshin Impact, even the one from Valorant. You know, the one that cost $50 freaking dollars? Overall, I think swords are pretty cool, and I've always wanted to have a sword and own a sword. So I got to thinking, and I came to the most obvious conclusion. Why don't I just create a sword? Now this begs the question, how can I create a sword? I mean, I can make one out of metal, I can make one out of paper, you know, you see all the DIY videos online. I came across a video of this guy who actually 3D printed his swords, and it was just so sick, I had decided to make our swords using this method. However, I had no idea how to do this. I had never looked into it and had no clue how to use this tech. I was basically starting from scratch. I drove to my local micro center and I bought a 3D printer and I got to work. I started to do some research, and by research, I mean printing out the first thing that I saw. I had already heard a bit about the Benchy, so I made it as my first print. Then I had the amazing experience of removing a print from the bed for the first time. It's time to remove it. Now I just gotta figure out how to. You like chip away at it like this, like. It's like attached. Maybe I'm just gonna wait for it to cool down. Oh, it's warm. Warm. Okay, we really are just gonna. Oh! Oh! It's a boat! It's a boat! After the Benchy, I just started printing random models. Ones that I had made, ones that I had found online, and it just slowly started to click. But it was really rough. My partner was also in on this. She helped me with almost every print from start to finish. If you've been seeing the dates in the top left-hand corner of the screen, you'll have noticed that these dates are from November 2022. If you were confused, this entire video consists of multiple swords which we have created over the past 8 months. I made this video as sort of like a documentation of our journey, so enjoy the ride. We decided that we were ready to try and print our first sword. We ended up picking the Favonius sword from Genshin Impact to be our first. We picked it because it was like the first model I found on Thingiverse, which is like the 3D printing website or whatever. Since there's no real way to fit a huge sword in our printer, the sword is actually cut up into smaller pieces to be printed individually. We fed the models into Cura to slice them and then got to printing straight away. It took around 3 days, but the pieces ended up coming out nice and smooth. We took these pieces and sanded them down, then finally we glued them all together. We were super new to this as we've never really done any crafting before, so this was pretty difficult and took a lot of time. The sword ended up being super brittle, however it was strong enough to hold, so here's me posing with my classic Reddit face because I love Reddit. With the sword all together, it ended up looking nice and neat. Next, we went ahead and bought the paint we needed for the sword. We used 2 spray paints and a bunch of acrylics. We used a sort of metallic gray for the main base of the sword, and then we used a black spray paint for the black engraving on the sword. However, it ended up pretty scuffed. We used the acrylic to do the handle and small details, and then finally we gave it a matte finish, which kind of ruined the look we were going for, but it looked amazing for our first sword ever. The seams where the individual pieces meet were still pretty visible. This will become a reoccurring issue and we'll try to solve it on future swords. I think overall this looked amazing for being our first sword and really gave us high hopes for the future projects. I've created a graph that shows what I think we did good, what I think we did bad, and what I think we could do to improve in future projects past the ones shown off in this video. I think it's about a 6 out of 10. During the process of making the Favonius sword, we actually felt confident enough to go ahead and start printing out the next sword. We ended up going with yet another Genshin Impact sword called the Mistsplitter Reforged. We ended up choosing this one because, like before, it was free on Thingiverse and we don't have any money. Since it took almost 3 entire days for the last sword to print, we thought we could get a head start on this one and start printing it while we worked on the previous sword. This would allow us to immediately start work on the Mistsplitter once the Favonius sword was complete. During the printing process, we did have our first hiccup with the printer. The printer was left on overnight and misprinted one of the biggest sword pieces. Now we were feeling cool, we were feeling confident, we had just finished our first sword, and we were ready to go. So with all of our pieces printed out, we started to try and assemble the sword. However, we had a major issue. When we downloaded the model from Thingiverse, it was not cut up into pieces that could fit on our printer's itty bitty bed. I took this as an amazing opportunity to try to get used to Blender and try to cut up the sword myself. It did not go so well. I thought I had done a good job, but once we finished printing the models, we realized the pegs were too big to fit into the holes of each piece. So we had to do a lot, and I mean a lot, of sanding to make it work. Still feeling confident we could learn from our previous sword and do better, we tried to fix our seam issue. We decided the best way to go about this would be using wood filler. Terrible idea. The stuff is too thick, and because we were at a time constraint, we decided to sand it off in the rain. It literally says do not do this on the back. It ended up terrible, did not fill the creases at all, and in the sword you could still see the seams. With the sword together, we went out to get materials to paint. My partner really did most of the work here, I just kind of observed. I tried to help out a bit, but I'm just not very good at painting. So I let my partner do most of the work, and it ended up looking amazing. In the end, we never actually ended up finishing the sword. It ended up around 90 to 95% done, still needing paint and a finish. We had a lot of difficulties with the paint, and we eventually gave up. Now, why did I include an unfinished sword? Well, I never really planned to make this process into a video. Like I said earlier, I just wanted to document our process of learning how to 3D print. The sword really taught us a lot about the amount of planning required for these projects, and just showed us the sheer difficulty of creating a 3D printed sword. We were pretty happy about how the sword had turned out this far, but we had not solved any of the previous problems since our last sword. We decided we would come back to this one in the future, so that's why it's unfinished. 7 out of 10. If you couldn't tell already, we were kind of getting ahead of ourselves. We were speeding through so many projects with such little skill and knowledge that these swords ended up having so many problems. Our efforts to improve were just not enough, and we realized this on our next sword. We ended up going with Asuna's rapier from SAO. I personally haven't watched SAO, so we ended up just doing the sword because it looked cool. Once again, we found the model in Thingiverse. Thank you, Thingiverse. We went straight to printing. However, I made a big mistake. I positioned all of the pieces to be printed in one go altogether. This is a terrible idea. Halfway through the print, all of the pieces were ruined. It wasted a lot of filament, and none of the pieces were usable. This really broke our spirits and made us want to quit. We ended up taking a good month break from printing. Back from our break, we went ahead and slowly printed each piece. It took around 3 days, and the pieces fitted together nicely. Here's a comparison for the size of the mist-splitter to the rapier. With all the materials, we were ready for assembly, but with work and school, we kinda had our hands full. We had to find time to work on the sword, and once we finally found the time, we tried to assemble the sword in one go. The long hiatus from working on a print had made us super rusty, but we were still able to assemble the sword and prime it. We were in such a rush that we ended up making a crucial mistake. We had once again forgotten to try and fill the seams. The sword was incredibly brittle and rough looking. Either way, I was still super hyped to continue working on the sword. However, my partner thought that the project was a lost cause. I didn't want to work on it without her, so I decided to wait and wait and wait. Finally, summer came along and I had all the time in the world. My partner still thought it was a lost cause, so I decided to try and be independent. I found a new method to try to fill the seams we still had left, and I went out and bought some Bondo putty, and it actually worked. I was so excited even though it left some weird discoloration, and got to spray painting the rest of the sword. I taped over the blade, which still needed to stay white, and painted the rest in that awesome turquoise. I know the colors in this sword aren't 100% accurate. I mean, none of the swords have been 100% accurate so far, but I still ended up really liking these colors, and I thought it looked really good. For all the details, I used acrylic and gave it a glossy finish, which looked fantastic. The only downside to the sword was the sloppy detailing, since I've never really painted a sword myself. Its brittleness and the bulge created by the Bondo putty, which, I mean, I could just fix by using less. I actually ended up giving this sword to my partner as a gift for our 3rd-year anniversary, and she was super excited, though she was still able to point out a few of the flaws. I was very impressed with this sword, and it actually showed some improvement from past projects. 8 out of 10. Making these swords was a blast. I went into 3D printing completely blind, and I learned everything in the process. Even though these swords aren't perfect, I was proud of what we had accomplished. We put our blood, sweat, and tears into these swords, and I'm just so glad that we were able to complete so many projects even with all the setbacks. I hope that we are able to continue working on future projects and continue to improve.